I signed up with this, artificial intelligence thing that attends the meetings and takes notes, and the notes are awesome.
It is.
It is really amazing. Okay, so, we will get started on the public hearing for tonight, and today is November 4th, Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. And tonight we're having a public hearing on two topics. One is about potentially annexing into Ash Creek, and the second topic is whether we want to join the regional water supply agreement for the Water Conservancy District. So we will first start off with annexation into Ash Creek. Did you have a question?
Chewing on flies.
Oh, okay, all right, just making sure. So those of you who saw the agenda tonight, saw that down toward the bottom, it had on there about voting. And there is nothing to vote on tonight. Crystal was preparing the agenda, and she had a deadline to get that posted on the Utah Public Notes website. And she had texted me and asked me if we were gonna vote on anything, and I did not see her text message to you until after the deadline to post the agenda, so she decided to err on the side of caution and put on the agenda in case we had to vote, but there's nothing to vote on. So all we're doing tonight is taking public comment, and that's all we're here for. And this is only the first of two public hearings that I intend to have on this topic. And as I said in the newsletter article, for those of you who read the newsletter article, my plan is to take all of the questions that we get tonight that we cannot answer and go and have a meeting with Zach at the Water Conservancy District and Mike at Ash Creek and get answers to the questions that I don't know the answer to. And then I will bring all that back at the next public hearing and see if there's any more questions at that point. All right? And then for those, how many people do you see online right now?
1, 2,
1, 2,
3, 4, and then your.
and me. Okay.
That's so bad.
Okay. So there'll probably be some more as time goes along. For anyone who's watching online, since you cannot, we have it set up where you can't speak. If you have any questions that you want answered, you can email them to Crystal, the town clerk, tomorrow. And we will put those in line with the questions that we go and talk to Ash Creek and the Water Conservancy District about. So, first off, we're talking about Ash Creek. That's the first topic on the agenda. So anyone who has questions, concerns, comments, whatever you would like to bring up with regard to annexing into Ash Creek, there's a microphone. Come up and say what you would like to say. Since this is a public hearing, this is all about the public.
April McKeon, I would like to know what would be the time frame for a sewer system to be constructed and make its way to Burton Town.
When Mike from Ash Creek was here, and you were here, he said he was looking at something like 8 years. I was expecting 10.
That's what I would suppose. And I wasn't clear on how that would be actually paid for. Is that some funding through drinking water or, you know, what, Ash Creek itself, or?
I believe Ash Creek was getting the funding from Virkin to our city limits.
So they get their funding through what mechanism do they get their funding?
My guess is going to be the Division of Drinking Water. Now, when, what would it be?
So, as the name states, the Division of Drinking Water works primarily.
Oh, about drinking water, sorry, I should have done that.
Yeah, yeah, so, a lot of the funding that comes into the public agencies, comes from the Division of Natural Resources, and actually some federal programs.
He did mention the, state water board when he was here on the 19th, when Mike was here, he did mention getting funding from the state water board. Just, so yeah.
Yeah.
So, the
but when-
Division of Natural Resources does drinking water is in there, I know it's not drinking water, but I mean, with the water reuse program and all that type of thing, I don't know if it was connected somehow, or that was.
Yeah, it was and they can fund, sewer projects, but it's not typical for them, to fund something like this at this kind of a scale. This would be other state agencies stepping in to review and determine the pros and cons for their perspective as well, not just whether we want to do it or not.
Okay, Paul has, looked like he wants to say something.
No, I was just.
Oh, well, you moved your microphone, so I thought maybe.
I did, I wanted to make sure I understood April's question, was it funding to get it up to the edge of town, or were you
Yes.
asking about funding in town?
No, I was
I just wanted-
curious, I guess, about how the whole project would be funding from our town border with Laverne to Virgin.
I interpreted what Mike said was his plan is to reuse that water that goes through the sewer system.
Right.
For irrigation.
Yes,
I felt that that's why he thought it might come from the water board.
okay. So I've talked with a lot of people in town, and most of the people that I've spoken with are concerned about the cost, not just the hookup fee and the $35 a month fee, but what it will cost for them to actually go from their home to the sewer line in the street. And Mike wasn't able to answer that question because it will be different for every household, but it would be nice if they could maybe give an estimate so people would have an idea of what it might cost them. Maybe a range, because he must have experience with projects that people have had to, provide their own line from their home to the street.
That's true, however, given that some of this may be 8 to 10 years from now, whatever he tells us today, he would expect it to be, I can't imagine that's the price it's gonna be 8 to 10 years. It all is going to be a work in progress over time. But going back to the funding, what he talked about when he was here was, if we did, that there could be public funding, there could be private funding, there could be a combo of public and private funding. There are many different funding sources to be able to bring, the sewer up here. Because we talk about public infrastructure districts and all that.
So I was under the impression that they were maybe going to use the same alignment as the trail.
Mhm.
And isn't the trail going to be here quite a bit sooner than 10 years? Or what's the timeline frame for that? I mean, they wouldn't want to dig the trail up to.
No, the plan is to put it below the trail, that's for sure. What do you want to say, Paul?
I think he had mentioned when he was here, he was having a meeting with, the corridor on that Tuesday, so he was gonna get an update, I don't know what that update was.
Okay, well, that's a question.
And yeah, it can take a while for that trail. I'm not expecting it anytime soon.
Okay,
That's my own personal opinion, because I'm not expecting it anytime soon.
that's it.
Because they have to come, they're gonna start down in Laverne, and they have to get all the way up the twist and then into Virgin. And then they've got the trail working this way from Springdale, so the very last section they're gonna do is Virgin
Okay,
to connect the two pieces.
okay, thank you.
Hold on just a second while I finish mine. Okay, Darlene, go ahead.
So I'm gonna build on what April said, and use our word. And, that is. I don't care how far down the road it is, but, a property owner here, I've been starting to research this topic. And with my house sitting below street level, as many of our houses do, that could cost me up to $40,000. I see ranges between 1,000 to 40,000. And if the city is getting, help paying to bring this into town, what relief will the citizens get? Are there any options out there? Because there's many, many people in this town who cannot afford the $3,100. If I am not hooked up to the sewer, another question I have is, am I still paying $35 a month? It's another question I would like clarification on.
That was my understanding from him, that you wouldn't pay until you hooked up.
Yeah, I just wanna, I think it should. it
That's
should
what
be-
Mike, that's what
Yeah.
he said while he was here.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. Okay, thank you for that.
There is a standby fee.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
There is
What-
a standby fee for.
once the sewer's there and you make the decision not to hook up, you do have to pay the standby fee. So if you come in and I just re-listened to Mike, the video last night. And my takeaway from listening to it was, once the sewer's here and you're within 300 feet, you've got to connect unless you get a variance. If you get a variance and don't connect, you still pay the $35 per month standby fee.
Is
Yeah,
there,
if you're within 300 feet.
If you're within 300 feet.
is there a cost to getting a variance? Is another question.
That's one of the questions I have, Darlene. Do you have to request the variance? What's the criteria for the variance? And what's the procedure? And I doubt if it's a cost, but I don't know. That's another question.
I'm concerned for the people in this community who are not sitting in well.
I do have a question for you in your research. When you come up with 40,000, I assume that's because you gotta pump it? Is that the reason?
Yes, and there's also cases where you're charged based on your frontage on the street.
I don't know if that's their rule or not. We would
Yeah,
have
I
to
would like
find out.
clarification about that, because that could be quite a bit chunk of change in some of our larger lots.
But that almost sounds like an SID of some type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I just think there's a lot of questions to protect the resident.
Yeah, the cost of frontage, I know in other communities, when they put in a special improvement district, then they charge an SID for the cost of that improvement. A lot of times it's based on the frontage of the property as a way to pay. Instead of bonding it, it's, or it's part of the bonding process, but.
But I'd like that clarification, and I especially would like to know for those citizens who reside here who cannot afford the hookup. And for some people who live here, $3,000 is a stretch. What relief are we giving them? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't remember Mike ever talking about frontage, but I'd have to go back and listen, but
No.
I don't remember seeing that.
No.
Okay. Next. Surely we have more than two people that have something they want to say on the topic of Athens Creek and bringing sewer to town. Hello,
Hi, Jesse Irwin.
Jesse Irwin.
One of my questions was, where's the wastewater gonna be stored? If that's hooking up to Levert, and is that going down to them? And then following that was who's gonna be using that secondary water? That matters to me.
Okay,
And then how will this affect our ability to add more buildings onto existing lots that have homes or other buildings? in town.
Would you ask your second question again?
Yeah, who's using the secondary water?
I'm sorry, question 3 again.
Yeah, question 3 is how will this affect our
Oh,
ability
yes,
to add
okay.
more buildings, on lots with existing homes?
Mine,
Basically, how is that going to affect our growth?
a lot.
Yeah.
That my expectation is that once sewer is here, that, we would probably be able to go to quarter acre lots as opposed to 1 acre lots. That would be my
And I
expectation.
suspect that. And my biggest concern with the first 2 questions is if we're having to pay into a sewer system, why would we not be getting the benefit of the secondary water?
Okay,
So we're the one paying for it, someone else is getting the benefit. Because right now, all of my water, secondary, so to speak, the septic,
is it?
that's watering my trees. And then this follows in line with, a question regarding, having to pump up or say like, people being below the street level, because there are a lot of homes, lots of homes that are below street level. So how will this affect the right of way for sewer lines to be established? So, you know, there may be a home that's below street level in one spot, but not necessarily below street level, you know, say behind their property or adjacent to their property, you know, so running sewer lines, further downhill to where other people may be in town and hooking up there may be advantageous. It's an idea. Obviously, there's gotta be a right of way on these, you know, for like power lines and things like that we had before, so that's, worth asking.
Okay,
And then the question about how it's being paid for, that's already been answered.
okay.
Thanks.
Jesse?
Yeah.
Your question, I'm gonna have the same one I asked April, so make sure I understand. Your question about how it was paid for, April asked, how was it gonna be paid for up to the virgin limits? And it wasn't about from virgin where.
Well, right, yeah, someone's gotta be paying for it for in the streets and down to the sewer lagoons
How is it gonna be paid for in virgin the town?
in the town of Virgin.
Just wanna make sure we.
Yeah.
Hey, Carol, I'm writing your name.
I'm talking.
Okay.
Carol Boycenal, and, a lot of my concerns have already been answered, and the first one was thank you for voting tonight. I was like really worried about it. I thought, oh my gosh, we have no information. And we're gonna vote on, they're gonna vote on this tonight, but you're not, so that's good. We talked about Ash Creek coming in and stuff, and coming to the border, I assume the western border of Virgin. And then it would have to get from there into the town of Virgin for us to be able to use it, correct? So like the other gentleman asked about how that's gonna get paid for, but then that's all complicated too, because there was the PID tossed around that's going on with Weeping Buffalo. And then what would that entail, and how was that work with this? Because they had talked at length about working out something with a PID, and they would pump a bunch, and he talked about having a pump station down at the bottom of Weeping Buffalo, and I don't have all the details because I can't recall them all exactly, but that complicates things a little bit too. And I assume from the border of Virgin in, then it would go sewer would have to go through all the roads in all of the subdivisions, which is huge. Those are just thoughts, I mean, and then is Rio de Sion included in that, because they're way up the hill, and what's that gonna look like? It seems very large. Very large project, but that was just it.
Okay,
I don't know if those are really questions.
they are,
They kind of questions and concerns.
they are good. No one else? Yes, Ron.
So, I'm certainly happy with stopping everything right now, but I just feel like there's a couple of things that should be pointed out,
Okay,
for the town's consideration. Certainly, there's a myriad of cost-related issues. But when it comes to sewer, the state of Utah has a specific, way of handling, wastewater. And it involves what we call a body politic, which means you cannot have a sewer system without a qualifying body politic. In our case, we have systems already in Virgin that fall in this category and are being managed by the state of Utah. If there are situations like subdivisions as examples, where multiple people are going to be tying into a system, that does trigger this requirement. You must have a body politic. So where I'm going with this is, it's a very global decision, and I'm actually a little surprised that there's not more discussion about it. Because the only opportunity, the only options that are really available to us are, one, find the closest nearby body politic that does sewer. Or figure it out for yourself, become the body politic, which is perfectly acceptable and is done all over the state of Utah. So it's not a no answer, but I think that one of the big issues is, do you want to turn this over to another body politic, or would you prefer to have local control over them, knowing, and I will add these thoughts, that all of the technical operational competencies have to come with that. So it does make a lot of sense in cases like this, when there is a body politic that is willing and wants to jump in and take that part of the infrastructure system. It becomes a reasonable choice, because the town no longer has to build up its operational and technical capacities to manage all of
but
that.
Ron,
Either way, it's gonna happen.
but yes, you are proceeding on the assumption that sewer is going to happen. Whether we do it or Ash Creek brings it, from what you just said, I am assuming that you are proceeding with the assumption that sewer is coming no matter what. And that's what I took from what you were saying about the body politic. If either it's the town doing a sewer system itself, or we have Ash Creek bring in a sewer system that possibly is paid for by private funding from PID, and they manage it. But either way, it sounded like what you're saying is you're proceeding from the assumption that sewer is coming. Sounds funny, it reminds me of winter is coming from whatever.
So there isn't any underlying assumption exactly like that, but yeah,
Okay.
the fact is,
Because we
development
have-
happens. Septic systems fail, stuff happens.
Okay, but we have plenty of people who don't want sewer to come at all. So
And-
this is,
yes.
that's what
Yeah.
this public hearing is about.
We are kind of past that in my view.
I am I'm not opposing that at all. I'm just saying that this public hearing was to get input from the public for those who don't want sewer to come, those who do want sewer to come. Why would you support it? Why would you not support it? I wanna hear both sides, I wanna hear everything.
Right.
So, Justin, I was hoping you might have something to say.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, the costs, and I think one thing that a lot of people aren't realizing is this town's septic systems are aging. There's also a cost to replace your system, there's also a cost to pump your system. And, you gotta evaluate that, but at a certain point, the town is gonna be forced to pause building, and no one will be able to replace their sewer because of the amount of nitrates and stuff that are going to the Virgin River, essentially. The next topic is, the water board. The town has already said they want to join the water board. Well, they want us to join the Ash Creek as a condition. So, I think the town is heading in a direction where we've already approved so much stuff. Like, you need to have a septic system and the infrastructure to maintain what we've already have and what we've already approved. I have a project specifically that I've been working on for 2 years and went through all the hoops, but now we're stuck in the body of politics. We opted for the clustered system, which the benefit for the town long-term is we're gonna put, sewer in the street. But now we are stuck at the state because the city won't act as a body politic, and Ash Creek won't act because there's no agreement. So there is, I think, us and one other developer that is stuck in the same situation, that it's just not, like, something's gotta give eventually. And lastly, I mean, everybody in the town says that there's an affordability problem. It's also, this town's never gonna be affordable with 1 acre lots and, very, very low density. So if people want to live here and they like the city, it's not ever gonna be affordable. That's all.
I guess that is the choice that we have to make here, is do we want the town to have high density 1/4 acre lots? Kind of be a cookie cutter community like Hurricane, have all the same sorts of shops and sandwich shops and Big O Tires, not to get down on Big O Tires or anything, but just like, look like every other town. Do we want that type of growth? Is that what we want for Virgin? I mean, it seems unfortunate that we would have to consider not going with the sewer because maybe some people don't want growth, or, we're not even really, I don't think, managing our growth well right now. Honestly, when you have 900 transient accommodation, and that doesn't even include short-term rentals, is that really? I mean, we have to decide what kind of a town we want. Is that the kind of town we want? Do we want rampant development everywhere? Do we want, I mean, the people that have 1 acre lots, and that's what has been kind of designated as a 1 unit per acre, and we've exceeded that. And so now we have these commercial developments that want to put in on-site wastewater systems. Well, they're not working, I guess, or they're too expensive, or there's some, other reasons. It's all about really development for developers. So I really think that we as Virgin need to take a really close look at what they want this town to look like. Because as soon as we join the Water Conservancy District and we get on board with Ash Creek, you see what happens in Washington County. I mean, you would think there was an abundance of water and an abundance of, every opportunity to build whatever anybody wants to build. And that's what this county is turning into. So if we want that for Virgin, then probably, just let it all hang out there and join Ash Creek and pulling agreement, and they're gonna come knocking down your door and this town. Guaranteed. So.
Thank you, April. I did have a question. Jean, Garate, you're online and I just clicked the button to allow you to talk. Can you talk? I want to see if we can hear you. If you were listening and heard me.
Muted right now.
Okay, he has to unmute himself.
He has to unmute himself.
Okay. He may have walked away and not heard, but I wanted him to
Yeah, his.
answer a question.
his-
So one of the questions that I have had asked of me is why are we pursuing this now? And I wanted to Jean and Leroy to answer the reason this is on the agenda. And we mentioned this a little bit last time we talked about this. I was planning to bring this up sometime in the future. I was not ignoring this topic of annexing into Ash Creek. I just didn't want to bring it up right now. However, it's on the agenda. Leroy had asked for it to go on the agenda and Jean had seconded that request, so it went on the agenda. And that's why we are here now. And so I was hoping to have Jean be able to talk and then have Leroy explain to the people online, because there are quite a number of people online now. And to those that are in the room, why we are on this topic now. What were your thoughts when you put this wanted this on the agenda? And I meant to bring that up at the very beginning and I forgot until just now. So if you would tell people why, yes.
Okay, if I get a.
Sure. And then we'll see if Jean pipes in, and then
Okay.
if you heard me say I wanted to talk.
Is there any reason that we have to include all the residents in this sewer district thing? Cause I know all of the people, or all of the businesses right now are willing to get on board and pay a more than fair share.
Correct.
But do we have to run it to all the homes? I mean, yeah, it would be nice to have, but do we have to?
Well, what Mike was saying when he was here is we were discussing the different businesses that want to be involved in this and bring sewer to Virgin and put in money to bring sewer to Virgin and where the main lines would go. But we were discussing that there are a few homes on Highway 9 and would they be required to join in? And then if the project on Pocketville Road, if there's a line coming down from Pocketville Road, if all of the houses along Pocketville Road would be required to join in. And then if one goes over over to the development up above my house,
Yeah.
and they bring it down, would everybody over there be required to join in? So we really were just looking at, those houses. That's what we were talking about mainly, I believe, last time, is those houses. We weren't talking about every single house in Virgin.
I was gonna say, I would think that it'd just be the homes that it would be to their advantage. I mean, if I've got a 1 acre lot and I don't wanna make it any smaller, then I should be able to keep my septic system. And you gotta remember though, that septic system is not gonna be cheap to replace if it ever has problems.
Right, if you ever have to replace it, the cost is probably going to be around the same as connecting. That's my thought.
Mike said that the cost was about $18,000 to replace your septic system. That doesn't include the repairs to your yard after it's done.
Yeah. Landscaping is always expensive.
One thing he did say, and I have to go back and look at the transcript of the meeting with him last time. he only talked, if I remember right, Paul, you've listened to the whole thing too. He only talked about bringing it to a certain point in town. And then it was not gonna go further than that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's because of where White Vice is located and it's down low. And the plan is to bring it there. It's very unlikely to go east from, White Bison, he said, because you just don't have the density of people. That could change when the demand increases. And now I'm extrapolating on what he may have said, but that the demand, if there's a demand, and I think all that properties now HRC that we approve, there could be a demand for different businesses there, and it potentially could go all the way to the east border. But right now, he's looking at, it's not cost-wise, it's prohibited to take it to the 101,
Well,
unless there's some other need to bring it out.
it probably isn't cost effective. I mean, we'd have to have another pump system, probably over by that.
We're gonna have a lot
So,
of, he said a lot of pump
we're
systems.
gonna have a bunch, yeah.
He said we probably have to have 4.
So it's.
Or just to bring it to White Bison, not to the east of that, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I can't imagine being that bad to get white license. I mean, I can't see where they'd have to have that many to get to there unless it's on their own system out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure,
I think that's what he was telling me
Yeah.
about, was the pump stations between White Bison
and,
and where we
Burger.
connect.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're gonna have to have, whenever we do it, we're gonna have to have at least one at the White Bison and, cause that's basically the low spot, and then another one over here at the RV park, minimum. And we may be able to gravity feed everything pretty much to them pump stations, but we're gonna have a couple, minimum of a couple.
So before you walk away, what is your thought, what is your opinion about, annexing into Ash Creek, if you have one?
I hate the thoughts of being in the sewer district, but
You what? Oh, hate the thought of being in the sewer district.
But I don't see that we got a choice. Former mayor, he was adamantly opposed when he was he was a chairman of the sewer district, but I don't think we got a choice. We've got, I know Ferber's over there, he's got a lot of money involved in his. Wildflower does, the campground, the camp and go, or whatever they call
Auto camp.
it, auto camp. They're gonna have problems. So they're looking for something to get that can alleviate their problems. And I know Stewart, on his motel over there, he has a member of the sewer district come up and inspect his. So that he has that money politic, but anyway.
Kim, did you ever get a response from him?
He will speak at the next meeting, he said.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's called between Zoom, 2 Zooms right
Okay, that's fine, all right. Yes, Darlene.
So Darlene, I'm sorry. So this, correct me if I'm incorrect, so the reason we're pursuing this is because of developers? Who initiated this request? Why, what started our process down the,
There's a lot of conservative that says if we have to join, if we're gonna join the pooling agreement, so those go hand in hand.
Well, we
So
haven't
it's
got to
obvious-
that point yet.
I know, but that is
That is not
that's
why,
part of it, though, that is part of their conditions.
that is not why we started this
No, it's
process.
not, it's part of their condition.
Yeah, I think the citizens deserve a history of why are we doing this? Who is encouraging it? Because I don't know of any citizens who are gung ho to get on the sewer, so if, as a compromise, it could be, I mean, the businesses are, to me, are gung ho on doing it. I don't know why these things weren't figured out before they were given permission.
Before who was given permission?
Anybody who is now having an issue with wastewater. Because I do know that with our allotted number of septic tanks, we would not have a problem. And it is these higher density projects that are causing the problems. And it seems to me, by the way, I just Googled on several reliable sources, the cost of replacing an entire septic system on average is about $7,000. That's the middle. So,
Yeah, but, when we had our. When we had Sunrise Engineering do our town wastewater study, and they presented their findings in February, an hour-long presentation here at the town council meeting. They indicated that they would like to see a much higher quality septic system required in Virgin. And that those systems, just the piece that goes in the ground, is a minimum of $10,000. That's what they wanted us to move to.
I agree that residents should not be required to go on. Current residents should not be required to go on a sewer system. And that includes no triggers. So sell your home X number of years, and there was one other one.
It was if your septic system fails.
If your septic system fails, yeah. I mean, we are so into property owners' rights. I know that's a value of this town, and that this is just seems like a basic one of those things.
Well, Ashby did say that, what he has found is that every time they go, into a new municipality to see about annexation, that the holdup every single time is the, compelling people to join, to connect. That's the big issue. So what you just brought up is consistent with what he said. Compelling people to join.
Make one more comment.
Sure.
The biggest problem we've got right now with the big users, like the motel and is they have to get the nitrate levels down.
Correct.
Well, as we continue to grow, pretty soon the nitrate levels in our septic systems are gonna start exceeding. And then we're gonna have to do something. Now, I'm not saying this is gonna be for a while, but when the new regulations and stuff start coming down, we will exceed our nitrate.
What new regulations?
There will be new regulations. There's always new regulations.
Well, I know this, the system that, Sunrise was talking about that they would require, that they would like for us to require new homes to put in. Those were systems that would remove a lot of the nitrates.
Yeah,
Just like these big, underground wastewater disposal systems are.
but you're talking about major dollars for those.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It ain't 14,000.
But we're doing a groundwater protection study this next year to see where we are with the nitrates and what they find. We'll be doing that next year.
So I'd like to explore a little bit more about what you were saying about the town being the body politic. What would that take and what would be the advantage of that? Wouldn't the town have to really hire like an engineer or?
I'm sorry, I missed your question. I was looking at the text.
So I was just wanting to explore further the idea of the town being the body politic.
Of its own sewer system?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can tell you that what Sunrise Engineering did when they did that wastewater study, what was part of the study, because I've got it here and I can show it on the screen if anybody wants to see it. But their expectation, there's pages and pages at the end, the appendix is the cost. $24 million is what they were expecting it would cost to just take care of a good wastewater disposal system in Virgin. And as we're going to be discussing next week, at the next public hearing on Monday, where we're talking about water rates because of the east water tank, we're raising water rates in town that some people are upset about, that is just to pay $2 million. And people are upset about this water rate going up, and imagine what it would be if it was $24 million. It would be hundreds of dollars that I think everybody's rates go up if we were to do it ourselves, based on this $24 million cost. And then you have to have your body policy, you have to hire people to be the body politic and manage the whole system on top of that. So in fact, raising the water rates raising sewer rates to pay for this $24 million system would have to include, in addition to just the system, the cost of somebody to manage the system.
It makes you wonder why Ash Creek would even want to be involved.
Well,
Right?
So I might be coming late to this and not have all the details that everyone else in here does, but it seems to me if the whole town is put into a vote on going to a sewer system, should we be putting something out there for a possibility for everyone to be on the sewer system? That was my assumption. Like whatever the cost is, regardless, somebody should be drafting something up for everybody to be on the sewer system. And then you can, you know,
lower the cost.
well,
Share.
that was my assumption. And because it doesn't make sense to have whoever, I don't know, for lack of a better word, these elitists in town utilizing a system like this where other people can't. Don't get me wrong, I think we should have a sewer system.
I believe the intent is eventually, let's assume that eventually sewer comes to Virgin. That this happens and that we annex into Ash Creek and they get funding and they bring this line that we've talked about so far, just a little bit. I am sure that the intent eventually is for everyone to be on it
Well,
because.
I think if everyone's going to be voting for something like this, you should have it in front of their faces where they can say, in the future, if I'm on sewer, here's where my lines would run. Here's where I need to connect to. We need to have a full map, basically.
Okay. I don't have any objection to that.
Well, I think you should have that in front of our faces before we even take a vote. Regardless of time frame, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that needs to be in front of us. And then we can make a more informed decision, rather than people not knowing really what's going on and then voting against it because we really don't know what the hell's going on.
Okay. That's why we're having these public hearings.
Thanks.
Okay. Were you going to say something? Anybody else? These are all good things everyone's saying. Sean?
Sean Evan, I didn't really want to comment tonight, but just seeing there are two separate issues at play and it's kind of been conflated into one. We've got the commercial developers along the highway and we've got the residents. They're two whole separate things, and Ash Creek will also show that as two separate things. As far as sewer itself, the PID, which has been proposed, they can have a body politic in contract for that, and they could take care of their own thing. And that would be completely separate than all the residents and everything else that comes there. So maybe that's the direction the town needs to look at, is let that PID happen. And the commercial developments, the subdivisions, the new stuff can all be under that and being taken care of through that. through that organization or that structure, rather than through the town, which then would require all the citizens to be involved in the Ash Creek, and doing the sewer system for everybody, so just a thought.
Rod, do you have anything to throw in here before I move on to water?
I actually think I served the pot enough.
Okay, all right. If you're good with that, we'll move on to Water Conservancy District. Yes, Drew.
Appreciate it. I have, maybe not so much a question as, some statements.
Okay.
Number one, this is gonna be an 8 to 10 year program. I don't know why, I'm not gonna live that damn long. I don't know why I should care. But I think sewer will definitely come to Virgin at one time or another. And I support it. If for no other reason, I take personal responsibility of what I put into the ground with my septic system. And I'm more than willing to pay those costs to hook up to a sewer system. Furthermore, I kind of point out that I think the value of your property would increase if you were hooked up to a viable sewer system as opposed to having a septic in my front yard, which is someday is gonna have to be dug up. You know, and I believe that it probably is going to be a good investment in the future. Secondly, I think most of you know my background in engineering. And I have been involved in creating at least a dozen improvement districts. And none of them been sewer. I'm not a sewer expert, although I've worked in sewers in years past. And anytime I had to do an improvement district, we had to be specific about our costs. And if my estimates were wrong and the district was created and the bids came in too high, the county had to make up the difference. So what I'm saying is that to do the engineering is desperately important, which is what this gentleman indicated. That being said, I also understand that yes, this is a long process. I had to do plans were 1-year plans, 5-year plans, 10-year plans. And those plans, of course, were amended as, you know, things went forward. And I think from what I hear people saying and their concerns, there's just so many unanswered questions right now. And I think it would really be time at this point, or at least very soon, to develop at least preliminary plans to answer these questions about how many lift stations, where will lines go, who will be served, who will not. And these questions is it gonna cost me $40,000 to hook up? I don't think any of us wanna see anybody faced with a problem like that, you know. But we can't really have serious discussions or have good answers to a lot of these concerns unless we do some preliminary engineering, know what the answers to a lot of these questions are gonna be. And yeah, with the first time we dip our toe into this water is gonna be different than when we're done in 10, 15 years, whatever. But I really think, and I don't know what entity would be responsible. It's not gonna be cheap to do mapping, to do preliminary engineering, to do preliminary estimates, to count taps, to count properties, to estimate what the costs are gonna be. But we gotta start zeroing in on this before we can get real serious. And I think if people are provided the information and those best estimates, there will be a lot higher level of comfort. Because if there's an election to whether we go on sewer tomorrow, with all the unanswered questions, I don't think there's a prayer in hell for it. But I feel like I have a responsibility to join and pay.
Thank you. And I want to point out one of the things that, we have not really discussed tonight so far. Everything has been about where the line's gonna go, what will it cost, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the reasons, that the Water Conservancy District wants us to join Ash Creek, and Ash Creek would like for us, I say annex in, I didn't mean join, annex in Ash Creek, and why Ash Creek would like us to annex in, is that they're concerned about us, the nitrates soiling the groundwater. And we sit right before the diversion dam, right down there, right past Sheep Bridge Road, the diversion dam, and that anything that comes from here through that diversion dam can affect the drinking water for the rest of the county. It's not just Virgin, it's the county and the county's drinking water that is part of this. And so there are many factors that go into whether we annex into Ash Creek. And I like all the suggestions that everyone has. I will be taking these back to Ash Creek and the Water Conservancy District, discussing both of them, because it's kind of a joint thing here. And, but I want you guys all to be aware that it's not just bringing sewer to Virgin, but it's also to help make sure that we have clean drinking water, not just for us, but for the whole county. So that's part of this. Okay, so it's exactly 7 o'clock, and I would like to take the time now to move to the second item tonight, which is whether or not we were going to join the regional water supply agreement.
Did you
With
want
Water
my
Conservancy.
comments?
Sure.
I originally suggested this put on the agenda. Joining Ash Creek for one reason, so that we would have these conversations. I have watched city government for many years, and if you don't put it in front and make an issue of it, it just kind of gets swept under the table as something you do later. That was the prime meeting, reason. Second reason was after talking to Zach at the Water District, I was informed that there's no way we could ever join the Water District without having joined or having some means of taking care of our effluent. And right now, we're using septic tanks. The third reason was that if we joined Ash Creek, is that they would monitor all new septic tanks put in. They would make sure they met a much higher degree of efficiency than the ones we're putting in now. And so those were the reasons that I put it on the agenda. I personally think that it's going to happen. Why don't we do it now while it's less expensive? We know that the sewer system would go in the roads. We know our water system in the roads is antiquated in the old part of town, needs to be replaced. And so, that should be all be done at the same time. And you're looking at a 10 to 20 year project for this ever happening. So that's the reason why I put it on, right or wrong, that's why I put it on the agenda.
Leroy, I've got a quick question for you. You mentioned that Ash would monitor sewer systems. Do they do that prior to bringing up the sewer system, like for the next 10 years, 20
Well,
years? So they
yes,
can monitor the system.
yes.
Yes.
My understanding is we joined Ash Creek tomorrow, if you put a septic tank in, it have to meet their requirements. Where now we go to the county to meet the county requirements. They go to Ash Creek to get a sign off on that.
Yes, that's what they told me to.
It's actually the state, it was not the county.
That does what? Oh, we
The
go to-
the inspects the sewer system and approves the plans and stuff.
no, we're talking about septic tanks.
It's the state health department.
Yeah,
But we go to Southwest Utah Public Health Department to get a septic permit.
which is the state, but it is state.
That's fine. But right now, that's fine that is just this, that is a division within the state. That's fine. But that's not the point. The point is that Ash Creek has different standards, more stringent standards. And they will require, once we join Ash Creek, every house, every building, everything in town that has a septic system, because we'll still be on septic until such time as sewer comes. That they are the person who will monitor every plan, every system, they approve it, and then you can go and get your permit from the health department. And not until then. And that's one of my, big pluses for joining Ash Creek also. Yes, ma'am.
My question's for Leroy. You said that do it now, well, it's less expensive. Did you say that just because of the size of the town currently? Or are you saying that it's because we would have so many commercial projects absorbing the costs? Or what was the reason for saying that?
I didn't
now?
hear the first part of your question.
You said that it would be less expensive now than it would be in the future. What was your reason for saying
The
that?
reason I said that is just because the normal inflation, for example, our water tank was supposed to be, what was it, 1.6 million?
Yeah.
And now it, including the 2.4 we're getting from the state and our own 400,000.
We're at 4, yeah.
We're at 4 million. And that's only 6 years ago. To have that water tank put in.
Could I get your name so we can make a note for who asked the question?
That's the reason I said it, just normal inflation.
Ashley Irvin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I'm very hard of hearing. Appreciate you repeating that.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to talking about the regional water supply agreement with Water Conservancy? Any last things on Ash Creek? That's sewer. All right, so now we're on to, any questions, concerns, issues about what would be the effect on Virgin if we were to, join what I determined the water pooling agreement. The Water Conservancy District calls it the Regional Water Supply Agreement. So, anyone have any questions, concerns, issues about joining the Regional Water Supply Agreement, what it would mean to Virgin?
So I'm not really sure that we know enough about what that agreement would look like right now. To make a real, even ask questions or know exactly what it's going to consider. For example, do we have to give up all of our existing connections? Do we have a valid water right, 81-1585, that consists of 83 acre feet that the town owns? And would we have to also give up that water right? It's an underground water right. I actually think that it almost seems like we only have two choices. We either keep our existing agreement with them, or we join the regional water pooling agreement, whatever the name of it is called anyway. So I have actually prepared an alternate proposal. And I let Paul and Jean take a look at it. And Jean has sent it to Zach Renstrom, and he is willing to sit down and talk about it. I mean, it's possible that it might not go anywhere, but it's just, it seems as if Washington County feels as if there's no limit to the amount of water that's available. I know that they have a 20-year agreement or a plan to provide water for a population that will double in the next 30 years from 200,000 to 400,000 residents. That doesn't really even include the type of development that we see. The plan has 3 basic components. It's water reuse, like we talked about. You take wastewater and treat it, and it's used for irrigation, which
This is in your proposal?
fresh water. It's just kind of the background of my proposal.
Okay.
And then they have the water conservation aspect, which they want to provide incentives for water conservation. And the bottom line is they expect to be able to provide water for this growing population. But if you read their study, it's a very slim margin, and it's all based on estimates. So, so I thought that Virgin is kind of a little bit of a special case, because right now we don't have a sewer system, so we can't provide any of the wastewater for their reuse program. That would be happening in 10 years or whenever we get a sewer system. And so I came up with another type of agreement, and it would just be to modify the agreement that we have with them now, and it would be more based on actual metered water usage that Virgin has. We keep track of all our metered use. And so right now they're saying, well, we have 1,000 hookups, or not to exceed 1,000 acre foot per year. And right now we're like 500, at the end of 2022, we had been using about, I believe it was around 500 equivalent residential units, which is basically a hookup, so 500 hookup. But we're only using about 111 acre feet. So what that tells me, instead of one hookup being 1 acre foot, one hookup is more like, that's almost like a little more than a third of that. So my suggestion is that we renegotiate our agreement with them over the next 10 years until we do get a sewer system. And I think that we base that on acre foot usage that we meter, and that would give us more opportunities to grow, but at a rate that would fit better into us accessing into a sewer system. By that I mean, as soon as we join the Water Conservancy District, I'm thinking that people will be, developers, whatever, will be knocking down the doors, like I said, to start building things, but we're not really prepared for that. So with this proposal that I would like to talk with them about, we would be controlling our development a little bit more, and Virgin would have the control over the development. And then we could move towards getting this sewer system, but in the meantime, not just have these huge projects that have on-site wastewater treatment systems that we know possibly are adding to the problem with the nitrates in the groundwater. So anyway, I'd like to be able to talk with the Water Conservancy District about my proposal and see if it goes anywhere. So that's that I'd like to propose.
Can you share that proposal with the rest of the council?
Yeah, I absolutely will.
I have it, I scanned it already.
I'll send it to, okay, great.
We've already shown you that. Shown you that.
Yeah,
Her.
yeah,
haven't seen it yet.
well, she just gave it to me like
Okay.
this afternoon. Okay. Right for this.
So, I did not expect a discussion of the water because there were no attached documents, and in the newsletter, it said if that happened.
Yeah.
It would simply be, put off.
Yes, I said I would do that, and then when I talked to Heath, he said no. So that's why it's not on there, but go ahead.
Okay, because since when I checked on the public notice website, there was no proposal.
Right,
For whatever reason, in the newsletter, it said that
Yes, I
there was no proposal, so that may be a reason why people are here to talk about it. Because there was no knowledge of that.
Hi, it's Carol Bushnell. This is gonna be cost again, and just to bring it to the forefront, I'm sure you're aware, but like you just talked about, the water tank that was gonna be $2 million is $4 million. What's the payback on that to residents individually? Then you're gonna have an increase in payments with Ash Creek. And then, also some kind of payment if we join the water district. So, again, I think just referring back to what the gentleman in the back said, it really feels like we need to have a lot more concrete answers as to what all this is gonna cost any one given resident, you know what I mean? Are we looking at like, well, between the bond and the joining and of Ash Creek and the joining of the water district and what that's gonna do to our rates and everything like that, what is an individual resident looking at? As far as these things in combination versus just one in and of itself? Cause maybe we'll go, oh, one of them isn't that big of a deal, but when you piggyback it with two others, you're kind of going, well, that's a little bit more money than we planned on. So, thank you.
Because it really does feel very mysterious.
Yeah, it's not.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It just really feels very mysterious right now.
What does?
The cost to the citizens.
Okay, all right.
I think that's one question, and that's about our surrendering our water shares. That's especially when we're using.
When you say water shares, you mean the water rights?
The water rights, yes.
Not the connections, but the water rights.
Yes,
Okay.
which is how many hundred, how many?
82 years.
You said 80.
Well, yeah, 83 acre feet, those are the water rights that Virgin Town owns that are still valid. But the water that we get from the Conservancy District is water that comes from the Conservancy District. We don't own that water. That's our share.
Those water rights, that's just irrigation water, correct?
It's underground water, rights, and it's been used generally for irrigation.
Okay.
But it could be used for other reasons if it's good water.
And I just think, I agree with Jesse, that we need, even a pro-con, I mean, something for the citizens to read and to see the value or no value, and then give that more valid.
With regard to water or with regard to all of this, like Carol said? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? If there's not, then. Yes. Chelsea, do you spell your name I-E or E?
Just me.
Just me, okay, thanks.
So I'm kind of curious on, if we were to change agreements or whatever it is there gonna be changes in the meters? Are they gonna be upgrading them? Are there gonna be any requirements like that?
I don't think so.
We upgraded your meter about a year ago.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because obviously that's an added cost. But yeah, once again, just, what's that gonna do for growth as far as, having a cap on water connections versus no cap? Who's gonna decide how many connections we get, how much water we get? There's just so many unknowns.
Okay.
They need to communicate that better. And then with those changes, are they going to be planning on upgrading any of the existing, legacy systems? Like, is that gonna happen? Because, like we're saying, some of it's failing. Is that gonna be happening instantaneously, so to speak? What plans would be in place for that? Because obviously that's gonna have to be paid for.
You're talking about if.
Our water lines, the current systems that are underground right now,
Uh-huh,
do they have any inkling of whether those are gonna be replaced?
Those are the town water lines. It would-
Right, but if we move to this new agreement, they might have some.
I don't think that would have any effect.
No, that would have anything, not at all. That's our problem.
Yeah, that's.
Jesse, we have what's called the Capital Improvements Committee, and April sits on it, and Leo sits on it, and Mayor sits on it, and a couple citizens. And that's one of the things that we're looking at, to prepare a 5-year plan to look at which lines, what you call legacy, but yeah, which lines need to be replaced.
Right, so we might already know which lines need to be
We're in the
replaced, but
process
with
of looking
moving,
at that now.
yeah, but with moving to another agreement, they might be saying, you guys might have been planning on changing them in 5-10 years, they might want you to change them right away.
I have
Because
not
they've got these.
Yeah, I have not seen the new agreement, but the agreements are placing that responsibility on the town. So it wouldn't be based on the district requiring us to do that. If we're still responsible for all the infrastructure in the town.
Right,
And that's the
Right.
current agreement, and I haven't seen that in the new.
I understand that point.
But
they might want you
They're
to-
not gonna make it a requirement.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. if
Very
we're gonna
unlikely.
require us to
They
make
need to
changes.
require that.
And then, another thought that we had was, when was it, the hurricane?
Sorry?
When the hurricane changed over?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to hear from maybe citizens of another town who have gone through this same.
Yeah, I'd like to know what their growing pains were. So if we can get some input from, maybe Liberton City Council or some of those people who are working on the system before they made their changes, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse.
Hey,
Mayor,
yeah,
can I just ask a point of clarification?
why, yes, you can, Rob.
So, this issue is different sewer because we're not talking about transferring our accountabilities in the Virgin Town water system. What we are talking about with the water district is, right now, they are our water supplier. And I refer to these kind of things to just keep them clear, wholesale versus retail. They're not necessarily interested in the retail side unless you want them to be. That's not typically where they play. So what we're talking about with Water Conservancy District is joining the pool that allows for the water district to continue to plan for the long-term needs of the community that would then include you if you chose to be a part of it. What you get for coming along for the ride is their pooling agreement is also financially binding in terms of what you pay for the wholesale water that comes into your system. That's what we're doing now, under a different agreement. And so, for clarity purposes, it's not so much about they're taking over your water system, which is kind of what I'm hearing in between the lines. We're talking about the entity that is already providing us with, to the best of my knowledge, 100% of our water. And just striking a different agreement, becoming kind of a member in the pooling agreement versus having a separate agreement. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes, but the people that are talking about water connections, what they are concerned about is, so right now we have approximately 350 water connections left. If we stay with our current agreement and the 350 water connections are used up, then we're done.
Right.
If we join the regional water supply agreement and we hand over our 350 water connections to the Water Conservancy District as part of joining the agreement, then when people come to town and want to do a development, we have no idea if we were still under the agreement and the 350 water connections were used up, we'd say, I'm sorry, we don't have any more water. If we're in the water pooling agreement, and the people that want to do a development go to get a water supply letter from the Water Conservancy District, we don't know what the Water Conservancy District is gonna say, they may say sure. Where if we had kept control ourselves, we would be saying no. And so I think that was the concern when they were saying, turning over control, that's what they meant, that we would no longer know where we are with regard to water. Diversion. That's what the concern.
That's what I'm hoping gets out of some of this discussion. Because those are the real issues.
The other thing, by joining them, we have a voice in it. We sit there and have a voice in it, where now we don't. We don't have a voice in their plans or how they use the water.
Correct.
Where if we join them, we have a voice in it.
When I go to the meetings, I'm sitting out in the room like you guys are, while everyone else is sitting at the table. If we join, then I get a seat at the table. If the mayor gets a seat at the table, whoever the mayor is when we join gets a seat at the table. And that's just the advisory control committee. They then have the board. And the board is not all of the mayors, they choose different ones that make up the board, the actual board.
And we might end up on the board.
And you could be, yes. So. Okay, if we have no other questions, then I'm going to close the public hearing, but Paul, you look like you have something you want to say?
No, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Paul. Paul, saying he hoped to be close, but short.
Steve?